Dignity and mental health. These are two things that can go hand in hand. When describing World War II, author Laura Hillenbrand said that without dignity, identity is erased. In its absence, men are defined not by themselves, but by their captors and the circumstances in which they live. This short quote can be related to people going through mental health issues, as they often feel like they're no longer themselves, but instead a captor of this horrible disease. So what does dignity have to do with mental health completely? To understand that, we have to get a definition of dignity. The Merriam-Webster dictionary says that dignity is the quality or state of being worthy, honored, or esteemed. But the definition of dignity that I most agree with is from psychologist Donna Hicks, who defines dignity as our inherent value and worth as human beings. Dignity is your worth, and we're all born worthy. Pretty straightforward, right? But what does this have to do with mental health? Like I said earlier, to get a background on my definition of dignity and how it relates to the importance of mental health, I have to tell you a story. But be forewarned, this story is not one with a happy ending. On March 23rd, 2011, my father committed suicide. This was just months after my 20th birthday. I was young, I was trying to get my education, and it shook everything to the core. What mental health and suicide does is it doesn't just affect the person who decides to end their life. It affects everyone around them, whether in big or small ways. It makes it where nothing is the same again. So, to deal with this death, we had to figure out how to get everything in the estate in order, how to deal with the grief process while me and my brother both were trying to finish school. It was something that was the hardest thing in my life, and it makes you wonder, is there death in suicide? Is there dignity in suicide? To answer that question, it's kind of individualized, but people who deal with these mental health issues are never quite sure. They don't know what is going to happen. They don't know how to handle anything. So do they even have the dignity to continue? To follow up with that, a little story about the two children who were directly affected by this suicide. My brother was 21 at the time, living in St. Joseph, Missouri, and he was trying to get his degree at Missouri Western. I had to call him at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday when he was in class to get him to tell him what had happened and to let him know what was going on forward. Now, my brother has never been a weak person or anything like that, but what this did to him was it caused years of battles with alcohol, depression, anxiety, and they continued, and it just kind of lingered on all that time. So, at the time, he was in a relationship that wasn't the greatest, so to deal with the grief and to deal with the pain of the relationship, he drank. Now, he was never actually an alcoholic. He drank to suppress the emotions of dealing with the suicide and everything else that was going on in his life. 3 years later, in 2014, he finally finished up his education, and he got his degree in elementary education at Culver Stockton College. So things were looking up, right? About a year later, or 6 months after he got his degree, his relationship fell apart. He started drinking more, and it's at this time he decided he needed a change. So for that change, he got a job at Mexico, Missouri to teach, and he was hoping that just being able to get his career started and get a little path that way would help him get over all the emotions and help him get his life sorted out. So after that year of teaching, he came back to home in Hannibal, and at that time, he was without a job at the time, so he was dealing with that, which it made him go back to drinking and having more depression and anxiety issues. So in early summer of 2015, he was in a terrible car accident that was caused by a combination of drinking and taking medication pills for his anxiety. This was a car crash that left him in the hospital for 3 weeks. He broke 12 bones in his body. He was unable to walk for 3 months. He had to be in a wheelchair, and he still deals with lingering pains from this wreck today. So after all of that happened, he decided to stay here and not really look for any specific work. He became an aide at a library at an elementary school, and then he started helping out at a place that helps former prisoners find jobs. So after that year, he currently is in China teaching, and he hopes to help that help him along the way. So he still has problems with his drinking, but at the same time he had the dignity to go forward in life after all of that happened to him. He was able to know what he wanted to do and go for it. And as John Green wrote, it's hard as hell to hold your dignity when the rising sun is too bright for your losing eyes. This is what suicide from someone close can do to you, or even dealing with your own personal demons. So my story, I was at a community college in Hannibal at the time. I got the call around 2:30 p.m. that my father had killed himself. This was a couple months after my 20th birthday. I had no idea what to do. I've never experienced the loss of a parent before this, and I was just shaken by it. So, what happened to me was I ended up quitting school for 3 years, dealing with depression and anxiety problems, before I finally got back into school at Culver Stockton College. So, over those 3 years, I worked a little bit, but I never had the desire to really do much more because I was so downtrodden by this disease of mental health. So when I finally did get back into school, I struggled because my mind still was not in it. I had all these anxiety and depression issues that would pop up from time to time and would leave me demobilized where I couldn't even get out of bed half the time in the morning. The real problem for me came around December 2016 when it was the first time I ever thought to myself that I do not want to live anymore. So at this time, I knew something was wrong and I needed to take steps to fix it. So I talked to people close to me and finally got in to get some help and see a doctor. But it couldn't give me back all those years that I wasted from dealing with this disease and not being able to have it. So I finally did have the dignity to get back and do what I needed to do, but it took away so much time, and who knows what could have happened if I would have done it a lot sooner. So to conclude this speech, Maya Angelou once said, "When it comes to human dignity, we cannot make sacrifices." Dignity, it means belief in oneself, that one is worthy of the best. It means that what I have to say is important, and I will say it when it's important for me to say it. Dignity really means that I deserve the best treatment that I can receive, and that I have the responsibility to give the best treatment that I can to other people. Dignity is who you are. Dignity doesn't define you, but dignity can help you so much along the way and get you closer and closer if you have the dignity in yourself to keep going. So remember when I said that this does not have a happy ending? That is because there is no ending to this story quite yet. The ending can be either happy or it can be a tragedy, and the choice is completely up to us to see if we can take it that way. So do you choose dignity or do you choose tragedy? It's your decision.